The human species that shouldn't exist.
Homo sapiens, aka us, are just one of over a dozen species of humans that make up our genus, Homo, which unsurprisingly translates to man. And while specifics are hard to nail down, it's currently thought that the first species of our kind emerged about 2.8 million years ago. With this given,
Do y'all believe in evolution? Like, there's genuinely people that do not believe in evolution at all. They don't. There's a lot of evidence of where we came from in biology and our genetics and shit, and how we act today, you know, with our survival instincts, stress hormones, and all that shit. So me being a psych major, I genuinely believe like evolution is real, based on how our brain and body works, and how our consciousness in the body works.
given date being based off of the discovery of the specimen LD350-1. A badly damaged
What the
adult
fuck are
left
these numbers,
jawbone
bro?
that is believed to have possibly belonged to the ancestor of either the Homo habilis or Rudolfensis, and is currently the oldest.
That's the thing. I don't know every single Homo species that we came to be. I thought it was like only one species that we just grew to be more intelligent. I didn't know there was like different ones.
Verified Homo specimen. And since the very first humans have appeared, each new Homo species that evolved has tended to follow a certain pattern, wherein each new iteration has become less archaic and primitive, while
So that's the gorilla. There's a chimpanzee shared by how many humans who has common ancestor. Okay.
also becoming more derived. At the same time, our ancestors' technological prowess tended to get more advanced through time as well. But in 2015, a brand new and very unusual human species was discovered within South Africa that totally flipped what we thought we knew about our species' evolution on its head. As despite being one of the youngest known human species to date, it seemed like it was dropped out of a time machine, having primitive features you'd expect to find in our earliest ancestors.
Jeez, bro? We had a crazy overbite. Good God, why is our teeth?
Not one of our most recent cousins. And frankly, that's just one of the many mysteries surrounding it. And so, who was this, you ask? Well, let me introduce you to Homo naledi, also known as the Starman. To date, this species is known from not just only a single location, but also just one cave alone, named the Rising Star Cave, hence the nickname. And it's here that every single naledi that we are aware of has been found. This cavernous system
Every
is one of the
single.
most perilous.
What happened? Did they just all fall off the cliff all together or some shit? Or that picture, like they were just throwing each other off the cliff? What happened?
And essentially took decades for scientists to explore. And from the get-go, it presented
And
researchers with a very strange
Is the cave actually, like, from what the shit that they're showing, is the cave actually that small and they just all end up in that small ass cave? How?
problem, which was, how exactly did the naledi even get there? But
Yes.
we'll circle back to that later. What's more
What?
important now is the fact that within this cave, the team found not just a single specimen, or even a few damaged ones, but instead multiple skeletons, over 15, that not only
Jeez.
ranged in age and gender,
Whole
but were
family.
also extremely well preserved, all things considered, with the original expedition alone yielding in excess of 1,500 pieces of bone, giving research
And it's actually really rare to, like, have your bones fossilized. Like, your body has to be, like, a certain type of temperature, it has to be deep on the ground, like, in a certain amount. What did Vsauce say? Yeah, he said, like, your body needs to be under a certain amount of ground. It needs to be preserved a certain type of way. And for your I don't know what he said, bro, but it's really rare occurrence for your bones to be found like millions of thousands of years later once you're buried.
researchers a pretty good idea of what these human skeletons looked like. Additionally, the quality of their remains allowed for more precise dating, with the species now believed to have originated and existed between 335,000 and 236,000 years ago, during the Middle Pleistocene, which is in fact around the same time when our own species first emerged. But here's the weird thing. Despite us knowing their age and having
I always wonder how, like, what did it look like when our species first emerged? What did it look like when the first man just started, all right, I can walk. I mean, walk now. Like, how was that?
vast collection of their bones, we still don't really know where they belong in our family tree, or which human species they're even closest to, as they don't really look their age, so you could say, possessing anatomy that can be summed up as a mix of features from more recent hominins, like ourselves and Neanderthals, and those of our ancient ancestors from long ago. For starters, they were exceptionally small for their time, with the known specimens possessing an average height of just 143 centimeters, or 4 foot 9 inches. It's all females. True, short kings and queens. But then they also had slender builds and bodies, which rendered them light as feathers, figuratively speaking, with most individuals having been less than 40 kilos or 90 pounds. About 35% smaller than your
They were light! I get they were short, but geez, they were light. I thought it'd be like more like muscle. Have a lot more muscle to survive in the wilderness, or to be warm at least. But of course that's the fur, and that's the fur, the hair, and all that. But geez, 90 pounds, 4'9", they didn't survive shit.
Typical Homo sapien, which also makes them the second smallest humans on the planet during their existence, with the first place crown going to Homo floresiensis, a species that lived in Indonesia. But in the defense of the latter, they were restricted to an island, resulting in insular dwarfism, while the Naledi, on the other hand, lived in mainland Africa, making their small size a bit more unusual. So definitely interesting. But for anthropologists, what was even more odd wasn't their stature, but their confuddling hands. You see, the actual hands themselves seem to have possessed derived wrist morphologies and a robust thumb, characteristics very similar to what's seen in Neanderthals and us, modern humans. However, at the same time, its other fingers couldn't be more different, as each were proportionally long and highly curved, traits typically regarded as archaic, as long curved fingers are unsurprisingly better for grasping things, those things specifically being trees. In fact, in the case of the Naledi, its hands were seemingly even better adapted for climbing than those of our forefathers, the Australopithecines, an ancient group to which specimens.
All these names that he's saying, bro, I'm just clueless. This is completely new to me. I don't know anything about, I know some things about evolution, but not this deep about evolution. This is all new to me.
Belong to, and who are often considered to be much better climbers than we are. Furthermore, beyond the hands, the Naledi's ribcage, shoulders, and pelvis were all more older in style as well. And when combined, anthropologists are quite certain that they would have been a group of humans who spent more of their time in trees compared to other Homo species, despite their wrists and thumbs being very similar to our own. And their apparent more arboreal lifestyle was perhaps for protection against.
I mean, that it makes sense as well why they were so short, because you know you got to be short and very light to even be able to live in trees. So I guess they were more like climbers, and they run in packs like monkeys, the chimpanzees, literally.
Against predators due to their smaller size. Yet, the mystery isn't solved with this, because as it turns out, they were also oddly capable of walking on the ground as well, possessing strong insertion of butt muscles, developed linea aspera, broad patellae, a lengthened tibia, and gracile fibulae, which is all undeniable evidence that along with being a big tree hugger, these guys were still bipeds that stood upright and would have been capable of traveling long distances on the ground. Plus, while their fingers were not like ours, their feet were. And thus, not only could they get around on the floor, but they would have done so in a very human fashion, so to speak, having a nearly indistinguishable walking pattern from our own. And so, this unique blend of adaptations for both tree life and ground life has raised a lot of interest as to why. And the answers vary, with some ideas simply claiming the Naledi were humans stuck in time, but more grounded ideas put forth try to answer this question based off of what South Africa was like at the time, which was a bit drier than normal, especially seeing that a few million years prior.
This is a beautiful view, but God, I love nature. I need to go hiking in places like this with a mountain, bro. Oh my God, it looks so beautiful, bro. I need to go hiking. I need to find places to go hiking at.
General transition from forests to savannas, and thus trees were fewer and farther in between. Therefore, it's thought the Naledi might have spent a good chunk of their time in one location, but given the lack of forest density, they would have been periodically forced to move from place to place after resources dwindled. And some speculate that because they were found in a cave, that their build could have also aided in scaling cliffs and boulders, and overall may have acted as a home. However, being good at climbing trees doesn't necessarily mean this. Plus, within the cave itself, not a single human artifact is known of that would suggest anyone was living there long term. And one more piece of information that has been added to this walking/tree conundrum was its teeth, of all things, which were highly unique for a human species. You see, despite being abnormally small, the teeth still had rather thickened enamel, which totally went against the usual trend seen.
So I feel like there were more. So I feel like there was, of course, it's a mix of both a human and more like monkey-like features. I feel like they were more on the ape side. Their teeth and like their hands and like the more features of climbing and being smaller. Yeah, they were more on the ape side of humans, and they seem to be a lot more unique than the other Homo sapiens that existed while they were roaming the earth.
In Homo species, whereas over time, enamel usually got thinner. And along with retaining this archaic feature, their molar morphology was also more like that of earlier hominins, resulting in some unusually durable teeth. Additionally, many of the individuals found had teeth that were in poor condition, which in conjunction with their design made scientists hypothesize, despite being more arboreal than normal, still ate on, or rather off, the floor. And I really do mean the floor, or the ground.
What? Why do these niggas look like? What movie is this from? What are these, like gremlins? It's not. Look at his face. Why is his face so strong?
Tear pattern suggests dirty and gritty food particles, which are often seen from underground food, like raw tubers. And at least to a point tells us both their feeding habits and that their dental hygiene wasn't exactly their strong suit. What's also funny is that even though the shape of the teeth were different than ours, they still formed and grew in a way that was similar to what's seen in modern humans, which is not doing us any favors when it comes to figuring out where they belong on our family tree. So overall,
I really feel like they belong to both, but they're more on the ape side. That's what it looks like.
The human species that's relatively young, existing at the same time that we ourselves did, but still is a great climber, has weird old-looking teeth, but walks just fine, and chooses to eat a rather modest diet filled with dirt and grit, which at the end may have.
Here's the secret to getting better ChatGPT results. Ventrilo is a Chrome extension that helps you write.
Be questioning their behavior, and as you might guess, the Naledi's brain was in no way normal either, and goes against what we knew, or thought we knew, about human brains. Now, given its body size, it was clear straight away that this group possessed much smaller brains than what's usually seen. And this turned out to be the case, with the average Naledi possessing a cranium of only about 465 to 610 centimeters cubed. Which is, in other words,
their head is so long, too. Oh my god, that jawline. It's so crazy. Oh my.
The size of our own brains, and comparable to how big ours are during the first few months of life, i.e. when we're infants. And so despite being much smaller in general, this brain size was tiny to the extent that their noggins were quite small compared to their overall body size, which you'd assume would mean that they weren't exactly the sharpest tool in the shed. And this might hold true, but what's interesting is that while other small-brained hominids...
I seen a video about, I think our brains actually shrunk our ancestors. Like our brain is a lot smaller than our ancestors, but I think they said it's because of the skull sizes and how big our heads were back in the day in between now. But I don't think it interfered with the intelligence of how we evolved, because we evolved a lot. We evolved very, very, very quickly, and our bodies and brain did not adapt fairly quick.
Tended to have more primitive brain structures. The Naledi's thinker was actually miraculously alike other later humans, like Neanderthals or ourselves, with theirs having showed well-developed temporal and occipital lobes, a reduced post-orbital constriction, and a modern-looking frontal lobe. And so this unsurprisingly turned a few heads, and made a few wonder if we're actually dealing with a highly intelligent human, in spite of the smaller size, as the actual features themselves implied sociality, the potential for complex language, and the production of tools. But unfortunately, it's hard to say for sure if its brain anatomy resulted in these things or not, as so far no technology or artifacts have ever been linked to the Naledi, Rising Star Cave included. And this is a bit bewildering if you think about it, seeing that the cave does hold thousands of bone pieces from this species, but not a single piece.
What happened for them all to die like this? Oh my god.
Technology. And thus, we just can't say what level of intelligence they were rocking. With that said, there is some indirect evidence.
Probably stupid as hell. Then I don't know, because
that they at least achieved a level equivalent to Middle Stone Age, as they were the only known human species who have lived in the Highveld region during the Middle Stone Age, and in this area, human artifacts are known of. Also, a subset of researchers do maintain the Naledi were essentially crazy geniuses, which is based on the nature of their discovery site, i.e. the cave. As I've talked about in a previous video, which you can check out, this cave, or more specifically, the part where specimens were found, is exceptionally hard to access. I'm talking steep cliffs, vertical...
How the hell did they get through there? Well, I mean, they climb like crazy, and they're a lot stronger than us physically, you know, with exploring and shit, so it makes sense.
Drops, and areas so tight that only very slender people can fit in. It can only do so while maintaining an extremely specific position. And so naturally, there's a lot of mystery and questions on how the Naledi actually ended up in this cave in the first place.
Literally, how?
Accessibility. But those who hypothesize that they were buried there by their own kind suggest the Naledi were exceptional climbers, who utilized a complex system to navigate the pitch-black caverns, which even today, with modern tech, has proved perilous to climbers. Additionally, if they had really buried their dead here, and on purpose, then it would also be considered an example of burying the dead, which is regarded as a complex behavior, and it would also be the oldest example we know of in hominins, period. Thus proving that small-brained didn't necessarily mean stupid. And so with all this said and done, who exactly were the Homo naledi? Well, if you've been following along, you should be almost more confused on the answer than you were at the start. And really, we're not sure. But as of now, there are 4 main ideas.
I mean, of course, they're not sure. They have a lot of ape features and a lot of features that we have. In my conclusion, I'm just saying that they're more on the ape side based on their abilities of what they can do, but they have some human features or some human intelligence in order to survive in this world.
First is that they're a group that branched off very early from contemporary humans, doing so as far back as the Pliocene, and no later than 900,000 years ago. The second hypothesis is that given their still primitive traits, is that their ancestors speciated after an interbreeding event occurring between humans and late Australopithecines, making them some sort of mixed species. And then the final 2 viewpoints is that the Homo naledi was either a sister taxon to the descendants of Homo heidelbergensis, or a sister taxon of the Homo erectus, who I will mention
Don't know what the hell that means.
and does share the closest affinity with, at least when it comes to the skull features. Yet overall, they still remain enigmatic, even for an extinct human species. And we can only hope that further discoveries will help unravel this mystery. And unfortunately, this does pretty much bring us to the end of what we can definitively say about them, seeing that nothing found has given us any more inkling into what their technology, lifestyles, or behavior was like. It's all very cloudy, and perhaps the only other insight we can make on them is that life was definitely not a walk in the park for them. For starters, the diverse age and gender seen amongst the specimens in the cave show that death was quite present at all times. And what's more is that many specimens bore pathology, which reflected living in an environment that was riddled with harsh seasons. To be exact, the teeth and dental defects associated with certain periods of development, leading researchers to reckon
Yeah, they were just born to just die altogether. That mixed breed, it just destined to die. Because their environment seemed to be very shitty in where they were and where they were trying to survive. They were small, weighed 90 pounds. All they could do was climb on trees, and they were kind of smart, kind of okay, and they were a mixed breed, so they probably had some defects or some shit.
that extreme winters and summers often plagued the area, causing a spike in disease and illness amongst the naledi.
Yeah.
And winters in particular were likely extremely harsh, given how hard it would have been for individuals to stay warm given their smaller frames. And even today, the region of South Africa in which they lived in experiences increased ailments compared to surrounding areas, namely flus, respiratory diseases, and pediatric diarrhea, due to environmental stressors. And to make matters worse for our tiny cousins, researchers believe that given their size, large predators like lions, hyenas, and leopards would prey on them from time to time.
Oh
And
yeah,
really,
of course.
the only good news here is that, interestingly, there is a distinct lack of large carnivore fossils around the Naledi cave. Now, no one thinks this is because the Naledi were actually vicious killers, but rather it's thought that the region was simply more desolate and rugged than adjacent environments. Thus, if they could, large predators tended to hunt elsewhere, where game was more plentiful. And while this could be off, there is the hypothesis that the environment is what ultimately may have done the Homo naledi in. Like I said, the Rising Star
Seems
Cave
like
is
it.
the only place where specimens are known of, but it's not believed that the site itself had something to do with their extinction, especially since the bodies were accumulated over a very long period of time. Instead, the presumed volatility of the region's climate possibly proved too much for the Naledi, and they were unable to successfully migrate elsewhere. And sadly, it does not seem they were able to survive for too long, as ultimately there are
Yeah, it does not seem they survive. It does not seem like they survived at all, like long at all. Probably for like a few hundred years, probably 50. Below that, it was dealt a very shitty hand, a very shitty hand.
a temporal period of about 100,000 years, which is on the shorter side for human species. But perhaps we'll come across a find that will surprise us all, both solving this mystery and perhaps showing us that they weren't any less impressive than.
But what are these thumbnails? Oh my god.